Oh god, you mean to tell me that a writer from Johnny Test is going to write a Spike episode? Who knows? Maybe it'll be good. I mean, you can't just be like MisAnthro and expect the episode to— God damn it! So here we are, Princess Spike, an episode that people have been talking about weeks before its airing for several notable reasons. Many people were worried about the episode not being good because of its name, the fact that its writer had previously worked on Johnny Test, and that, well, it was a Spike episode. Of course, I wasn't going to let any of these things cause me to worry about the episode, and I kept my hopes high that the writers would continue to give Spike the respect that he deserves. What we got was my new least favorite episode of Season 5 so far. Alright, let's start from the beginning. The Grand Equestria Pony Summit is at hand, and Twilight is responsible for taking care of personal matters later in the same day. However, since she spent a lot of restless time working on the ceremony, she needs sleep in order to be ready for her next duties. Spike is tasked with making sure that Twilight gets the sleep that she needs, but somewhere down the line he gets too full of himself and begins to use Twilight's authority as a means for his own selfish benefits. Firstly, the episode's story, or at least its main plot, feels fairly simple. The main conflict involves preventing Twilight's nap from being interrupted throughout. But somewhere down the line, the episode begins to suffer from some kind of identity crisis. I mean, first it's about Twilight trying to get some sleep, then it's about Spike doing a bunch of favors for the townspeople, then it's about him using Twilight's princesshood for his own desires, then it's about a whole bunch of mishaps provided by previously bad decision-making. Ultimately, this episode loses track of what it wants to be, and that could hurt its pacing. Which wouldn't be so bad if the character was fun to watch, right? Well, Spike doesn't come across as very interesting this time around. This isn't even me expecting better writing from him after episodes like the Equestria Games and Inspiration Manifestation. I just wanted Spike to have good writing given to his character casually. And the writing for him in this episode isn't really good. Firstly, he seems to overreact ridiculously to a lot of noise-making in the first act, which again wouldn't have been so bad if it wasn't proven to be bad decision-making in the end. Later on, he ends up getting too cocky with how he uses Twilight's reputation for his own desires, which doesn't really feel like him. It was okay at first when he was helping delicates with their problems, but after that, it felt like the episode was trying way too hard with his selfishness. At some point, he tells himself that he did a good job today just because making sure Twilight got some sleep was the only thing Cadance asked of him. Well, I hate to break it to ya, but flooding the city is not a job well done. At the end, he talks about the lesson he learned, but even then, it seems that he would have known better than that. Even going by the thought of he's just being a kid, the episode has way too many consequences for that to be seen as a reasonable justification for his mistakes. Aside from that, the episode is surprisingly unfunny. This isn't really a problem if the episode isn't aiming for making its audience laugh, but given the number of jokes in this episode, it feels like the episode was trying to be funny. But the scenario that the characters are placed in and the setup for these jokes feels so bland and uninteresting that the writers are given very little to work with. As a result, the episode suffers from very weak humor. Outside of Twilight talking in her sleep and a mime, I don't remember giggling or even chuckling at anything in this episode. The third act also feels kind of rushed. It begins with all of Spike's decisions resulting in the summit being damaged and an angry mob going to Twilight for what happened. Then Spike apologizes for his screw-ups, the mob is quick to forgive him, they rebuild a previously toppled statue symbolizing cooperation between others, and the episode ends on one last failed joke. The main flaw of the episode overall is that it just feels so boring. And it really is a shame since the episode takes place in Canterlot during what seems to be a political meeting amongst a wide range of other towns and environments in Equestria. With all these talks of economy and summits, I do feel curious as to how the politics in this world works. But we still need to make with what we got, and what we got was a really boring Spike episode, and honestly, the worst episode of Season 5 so far. A lot of people have talked about Appaloosa's Most Wanted being the worst episode of Season 5 so far, and in some ways it does have worse writing, but the episode still deserves credit for having good CMC characterization, a reasonably strong moral, and a likable side character. Princess Spike doesn't have any of those strengths. Spike's characterization is dim-witted at best and clueless at worst. There's no new side character introduced serving as a focus of the episode to keep our interest, and the moral just feels so basic and not told in an interesting way, let alone that it just feels like the same moral that we explored in Twilight Time. I don't mind the show tackling the same moral more than once in different ways and with different characters, but the episode itself still needs to elaborate its intentions in a unique way. And Princess Spike doesn't really do that. I guess it has a few nice things, like Cadence being a voice of caution, returning cameos by Fancy Pants and that French Griffin, and like I said, there are at least one or two instances that made me laugh. But overall, Princess Spike is a really unengaging affair. But that's not to say the episode is terrible for simply being boring and uninteresting. I can still see a lot of people liking the episode for what it is. Hell, considering that this was an episode written by someone who worked on Johnny Test, I'm actually surprised that this episode was as watchable as it was. But in the end, I just can't bring myself to say that I liked it. It's not that bad, but it's not an episode I'd watch again. MisAnthro Pony, over and out.
Oh, come on! I'm so bored. So very, very bored. I'd rather watch a bunch of cupcakes sing a merry song and then go surfing on a door. It's so dull. There's nothing to say. I'd rather sugarcoat a leprechaun, feed him to a dog, and then go play some